everyone, and welcome to the Categorically Romance podcast. My name is Bree, and I have a really exciting episode today. I have two wonderful authors here. We have author Jennifer St. George. Jennifer, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
And we have author Clare Connelly as well. Clare, thank you for being here.
Oh, it's lovely to chat to you.
And it is both of y'all's first time here. So we'll start with Jennifer. Jennifer, tell us a little bit about you, and then Clare, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my background before I got into writing was management consulting and marketing. So I worked for some big companies for about 20 years, like Guinness, where I did some amazing things like launch Guinness in Russia. And as part of an American promotion, we gave away a pub in Ireland. And so I used to fly around the world a lot and stay in lovely 5-star hotels and travel business class, which was very useful because then I was able to set my books in lots of exciting exotic locations. So I didn't start actually writing till I was in my 40s. So by then I had lots of great experiences and been to lots of places that I could set the books in, which was really, really fun. And then I got into writing, which was a whole new world, which I absolutely loved. And you guys would know this, that when you discover romance writing and the romance writing world, you meet all these incredible people. So I've just loved getting involved in romance writing, and as a result, met some of my best friends through it. So it's been absolutely spectacular.
Wow, I love that. Very, very inspiring. I'm turning 37 this year, and I would love to learn how to write romance since I read it all the time.
That's
But I
right.
definitely have had those thoughts of like, okay, if you don't know it by now, you're just not going to know it. But so to hear like, oh, I was in my 40s when I started, it's like, there's still time.
Oh my God, Brie, there's so absolutely. And I think starting later also gives you a lot more life experience. And I'm sure it's the same for Claire. You have these interesting things happen to you in life, and then you can weave them into your stories, these little vignettes of life that really create authentic stories, because those little bits of the story you've lived. I had this hilarious example where once I got bumped up to first class, and I was so excited. I was like, oh, I mean, everyone could tell I'd never flown first class before. But when you go through first class, you walk on this red carpet, but you still have to take your shoes off for the security. I had holes in my stockings so that when I took my shoes off, you should have seen because you get escorted through, and the man escorting me through just looked at me with a look on his face to say, yeah, you really don't belong here. So that went into a book.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Amazing.
Yeah. I read
Yeah.
your blog post that you did on setting, and I think you shared that story in there, and you were
Yeah.
like, here I am being fed like lobster and champagne.
Yep.
And I'm like,
Yep. And hiding the holes in my stockings. Yep.
mine would probably be like, does her socks actually match? Probably not.
Yes.
Claire,
Oh,
tell us a
dear.
little bit about you.
So I've always been a passionate romance reader. And I think if you're wanting to write romance, reading romance is the most important thing, because looking back, I never had any formal training as a writer, but when you read voraciously, you sort of start reading and seeing the scaffolding of the book and how it's set up and what you like and why you like it. And your brain's always ticking over. So I, from a young age, did start writing. I think I was 12 when I wrote my first manuscript, submitted one at 15 to Mills and Boon, which was rejected. And I've kept writing ever since. So even I know it was, what did a 15-year-old know about events? I fudged it together with things I'd read.
But I love that so much. Like, if it would have actually been accepted, that would have been glorious.
It would have been a shock to my parents. But I just always wrote. So even when I wasn't actively writing to pursue a career as a romance writer, I'd sort of given up on that dream. I was writing really long emails to my friends or blogs, or, I think that's part of it. Writers write, you just can't not. And it was when my kids were little and I was at home with them, and I just loved being a stay-at-home mum, but also found it hard. It's a hard adjustment to go from working to be at home with kids. And I craved that sort of escapist fantasy more than ever. So when my kids would nap, I would write. And this time I was really serious about wanting to be a published writer. And so I was submitting to Mills and Boon, and it takes a long time. The process can be quite lengthy because they get so many submissions. And I was getting rejections, but I really loved the books that I was writing, and I did feel that each one was getting better and better. And after I'd had enough rejections to knock the wind completely out of my sails and I was ready to quit, it was both my sister and husband said, "Oh, you can't. Why don't you try self-publishing?" And it was back in 2014 when that was sort of pretty new, and I didn't know much about it, and there wasn't the resourcing available anywhere that you can find now. So I just did it. I just uploaded my book onto Amazon, which was in hindsight, I can't believe I did it, really. But anyway, it sold, and it sold well, and it reviewed well, and that really prompted me to keep going. And because I had been writing now for several years to submit, and I'd been getting the books to the point where I thought that they were good enough to submit for publication, I had quite a few books that, with some editorial, I was ready to publish. And so I did. And then that led to, a career as a self-published romance writer. And then off the back of that, contract with Mills and Boon, which was just, always my long-held dream to write for Harlequin. So I now do both.
I hope that 15-year-old girl was still like so giddy, like, I did it.
100%. Do you know, so I'm sitting chatting to you in my office, and across from me, I actually have my original rejection letter, which they used to send in the mail. So I have that framed on my wall from 1999 because it's, that girl got that rejection letter and was crushed by it, and it's juxtaposed with my very full bookshelf of published Harlequins.
Yeah, she did it. She eventually did it. Yeah.
Yeah. She learned a bit, got some life experiences, some maturity, and she did it.
And Claire is being very modest because she's not just any old self-published writer. Claire, you need to say what kind of self-published writer you are.
Oh, what kind of self-published writer am I, Jen?
You're an Amazon all-star. Explain what that is.
Oh, well, it was quite amazing. So when it was, I can't even remember when, but it was quite early on, and I had no idea what this even meant, but I got an email saying I was an Amazon All-Star, and it turns out it means you're sort of in the top, I think it was the top 50 in America and 20 in the UK or something of Amazon exclusive authors, which was just mind-blowing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I really do write the stories that I love. I've always written for myself first, which is why I think I just passionately love writing. Like I love to sit down at my keyboard and write because I can't wait to see where the story goes. But then to have so many people reading my books is just incredible. Like it's really very gratifying.
You want people, like, I love that you said, I write the stories that I want to write. And like, I love sitting down and writing. But for someone that's new, okay, like we're going to use me here. It is hard, right? And people, like my friends, like they'll cheer me. They're like, my cheerleaders are like, you read plenty of romance, you can do this. And I'm like, reading romance and writing romance, I feel like are very different. So then like the harder it is, the sitting down and being like, okay, nothing is happening, I don't know what is happening, I feel like sucks some of the joy out a little bit. So can you talk us through like writing through the suck and remembering that like you love this? Like talk us through that.
Yeah. So I guess like I don't love every book as I'm writing it. Not every single one. That's the dream, obviously. I love the book I'm writing at the moment. That's been amazing. But it does certainly come with experience that you're going to reach a slump point probably in most books, and you just have to push through it and trust that you can fix up whatever goes wrong later. If it's flat, if the chemistry is not there, there are things that you can do at the editing point to put that back in. I've actually got a post-it note above my desk that says, write the story, fix it later, because that's the thing. You just can't give yourself a reason to lose momentum with your writing. You've got to keep putting the words down, and then you can come back and make it work better.
Yeah. And it's funny, in every single book, I have gone out to my husband and gone, oh my God, it's so hard. This is terrible. I'm never going to get this done. I just don't know. And he goes, oh, okay. So we're up to week 10. And I hadn't realized it, but I do that every single time at a certain point in the book. So I got some great advice, and I can't remember which author told me, and she keeps a diary as she's writing, and you learn that you do this sort of the similar pattern all the way through. So you have to start to understand what kind of writer you are and when it is that you hit that, oh my God, I can't do it point, and how to push through and get the book written.
Yeah. Well, Jennifer, you said like, okay, so you were in your 40s. What
Yeah.
happened? Like, what were you doing? Like, when like the bug was hitting you, you were like, how did it happen? Where it was like, I want to write a book.
Yeah, it's interesting because what changed for us is that we actually moved to a small regional town in Australia called, I don't know if you've ever heard of it, it's called Byron Bay. It's a little tourist town
Thor
on
lives
the
there.
beach. Yeah, Thor lives there. Chris Hemsworth is my neighbor. Um,
Oh, wow.
well, he's not that close, unfortunately. Not close enough,
Where do you
but
get your inspiration from? Well, I look out my window.
But you do see him around all the time. I mean, I walked past the beach the other day and he was getting out of his wetsuit. So it does happen.
And you kept walking?
Yeah. Frozen to the spot for a moment and then kept going. And so we moved here when my children were little as well, similar to Claire's. So, you have, when you get the kids into bed, you have that short amount of time. And I think also, as with Claire, I learned to write efficiently because I just, the reason I got into it is I saw a competition for a book and I thought, oh, I'll give that a go. And I put my entry in and I came third. And I thought, oh my God, I might actually be able to do this. But of course, then I wrote 5 full-length manuscripts, sending them off to Mills and Boon in London. And I was getting rejections, but my rejections were getting better and better. And this is something else we teach people is that you can get a good rejection letter. So, by the time I was getting sort of 2 pages of notes saying, think about this. Can you do this? No guarantee of publication, but please, we'd love to see you resubmit. So you learn in romance writing that rejection is actually a really good rejection. And so I'd done all the things that they'd wanted me to do. But at that point, I was also volunteering for Romance Writers of Australia, and I was doing their sponsorship and media. And I was on the phone to an editor from Penguin, and we were doing all the business stuff for the conference. And then she said, well, what do you write? And I said, I write category romance. And she said, what are you working on? And this is another tip we give our students, have your pitch ready. So I had my pitch ready. I pitched my book, and she said, send it to me. And I said, but you guys don't publish category romance. And she said, now, Jen, when an editor says, send me your manuscript, the answer to that question is, yes, I will do immediately. And I went, oh, I will do immediately. And I had to still do it properly. I had to write a cover letter, I had to write a synopsis, and I had to send the full manuscript. But I got all that off in about 2 days. And 2 weeks later, I had a contract with Penguin. So it just went from there.
So let's get into the writing stuff. Y'all have this course that I want to hear all about it. I think Amy is who I saw it like post about it first, and I'm like, what is this that you're doing? And then I was like, okay, Allie's doing it, Clare Connelly, Jennifer St. George. I'm like, it's a team of people. So for our listeners, like, will one of you share what the course is, and let's get into the details.
Yeah, sure. So basically, I've been lecturing at university for the last 5 years, and one of the things I lecture in is creative writing. And as I was going along, back when I started, I had no idea how to write. So I traveled all over Australia to go to courses run by people like, Amy Andrews and Ellie Blake, and, to try and understand how to write a book, because, it's very rare your first book gets published. And I think, all of us can talk through those stories. But as I was teaching at uni, I thought, well, wouldn't it have been great and I created a course, which I wish I'd had when I first started writing. And then I was sitting there thinking, oh my God, I know some of the best romance writers in the world. So we got together, I pitched the idea. Amy, Claire, and Ali were on board straight away. And now you've got, some of the best authors in both category romance and self-publishing going step by step through how to write a novel that sells. And we cover everything from, what are the key ingredients of a romance novel, how you do compelling characters, the really key points in structure that you have to hit. So there are really important turning points in a book. And as Claire was saying before, if you've read a lot, you sort of intuitively know what they are, but you might leave some out. So we take you through how you hit all those turning points. Things like you've got to have a great beginning. If, readers, you've got seconds really to grab them. So that first line, that first paragraph, that first chapter, how to craft that really, really well. And then we go on to things like authentic settings, dialogue, point of view. And Amy Andrews does this incredible section on how to write great sex. So, if you want to be that presents writer, or you just want to, even if you're a shut the door writer on the bedroom, she'll take you through that. We look at traditional publishing, and Claire does an incredible thing on self-publishing. I mean, imagine learning self-publishing from an Amazon All-Star. And the other thing you'll learn about Claire is she's probably the most productive romance writer in the entire world. And Claire takes us through all her tips on productivity. So it's really comprehensive. It's written by people who know what they're doing, who've done it successfully. So, and putting it together was incredible fun. Ali, Amy, Claire, and I have had a ball doing it.
Yeah, it was amazing. It really was really fun doing it. And I think, I've heard a few people say that they want to write romance because it's easy, but it is not easy. It is especially category romance because it's a short form, right? It's 55,000 words roughly, and you have got to get so much into those 55,000 words. And readers of category romance are so voracious. They know if it's not authentic. They know if your heart's not in it and you're just going through the motions. You have to really get all the feels in there. And that is something that we teach in the course. It's how, if your characters don't have chemistry, how do you get it there? How can you build that tension between them? Even if you're writing, as Jen said, closed door romance, there still has to be that sexual tension on the page, even if you never see that fulfilled. So it's all that really practical stuff that pulls it together into a romance. But it's hard. It's a skill to write romance well.
Is it best if, say student Bree comes to the course and Bree wants to write a true love, and her heart is set on, I want to write this, but I don't really feel like I even have a story. What do y'all say to student Bree first? Because like Jen, you said something really that just, I feel like you called me out here. How important the first chapter is, how important that first line is. And to be honest, that is very intimidating, and that is why student Bree struggles to get words on the page, because so many of my favorite categories or romances in general, it's like, yes, the first chapter got me, the first sentence got me. So can y'all what would you say to student Bree who is struggling with just getting started?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think almost everybody finds it hard sometimes to get started. And so we teach you, and what I've discovered is knowing a lot of romance writers is everybody approaches writing a book completely differently. So Ali Blake, for example, is quite extraordinary how she puts a book together. For her, it's more a patchwork of scenes. So she sometimes writes the end first, or she writes, the pivotal moment, like the black moment first, or, that leaving the ordinary world into the extraordinary world, which is, a part of book structure first. So, and then she patches the whole book together, which I find quite incredible. And her stories are just amazing. The last one I read of Ali's, I'm still thinking about months later. They really hit you hard. But I don't write like that. I write from beginning to end. I couldn't patch a book together. So what you actually have to do is just write the book whichever way it comes out. And definitely don't get stuck on that first line. Write all the way through, because everything is fixable. And I loved what Claire said, that you just get the words down, and a lot of writing a book is rewriting. So if you can just, and I write, my first drafts are absolute rubbish. I just basically throw the story down onto the page so that you get a sense of what you have to work with. And then it's about going through systematically, and we sort of talk through all the key things you have to do. But if you just get that book down, you'll be amazed at what you actually have once you've gone from beginning to end. But one of the best pieces of advice I had when I was flying around the country to all the best romance writers in the country was Melanie Milburn saying, write the book, edit the book, submit the book. Write the book, edit the book, submit the book. And she said, you just have to keep going. So you don't know what you've got until you've written your first book. So just go for it in whichever way works for you.
And the other thing is, if it's ideas that you struggle with, we cover this in the course, because for romance, as you know, it's conflict and tension is really what propels the story through. Why can't the couple be together? It's not really a romance if on the first page there's nothing in their way and they can just ride off into the sunset. So we have a whole unit that deals with conflict and tension. So how do you get that into your story? Because that's often where I start with my plotting, is problem for my couple. And then once I've got that, I actually find that's almost my elevator pitch. That's my one sentence that I keep in my mind, where if I feel like I've lost my way at the 30,000 word mark, I come back to, well, hang on, what was their initial issue? Why can't they be together? And I just make sure that I'm layering that in really strongly. So there's heaps of things in the course that hopefully will give the building blocks to our students, so that they can come out and know how they can attack their writing to get a book, to get it finished.
Is conflict and tension like one of the sections that you think the students, I don't want to say like student Bree would be like, hey, this is probably the part that I'm most intimidated and struggle with the most?
Yeah, I think, and what's interesting is once we teach you, it's basically goal, motivation, conflict. What do my characters want? Why do they want it, and why can't they have it? I'm the same as Claire. I nailed that down before I start the book, and we teach you how to do that. And one of the other areas that people, they don't find challenging, but I think once they go through Ali Blake's All About Structure section, it's like light bulb moments are going off all over the place. They suddenly see how structuring a book doesn't have to be really, really hard as long as you work through the steps. It makes the mystery of writing and breaks it down for you so that you can follow it.
Ali she is a wizard with that. I mean, I have my brain works in a super chaotic way, and even I have learned how to structure thanks to Ali, because she is unbelievable at how she teaches structure.
Yeah. And we've written it for people who are trying for the first time to write a book, but we have students who have written quite a few books, and even published authors are doing the course and saying they are learning so much out of it, because I think as you learn to write, certain things you don't get them into your writing until you've written for a little while. So this course just takes you through everything you need to know and really supports you to get sort of the first 10,000 words down by the end of the course. So you've actually got, 3 chapters, you'll have a cover letter and a synopsis. So you've got a pitch package ready to go by the end of the course.
Part of like another thing that I kind of struggle with, aside from the conflict and tension, which I just know how important it is. And it's so interesting. One of you said something like, essentially, like when you go to pitch, that is what you're pitching. And I think that's another reason why I'm so intimidated. But like, also, like I have heard so many conversations about really getting to know your characters. I've heard people recommend figuring out what their Enneagram is and their zodiac signs and all of
Yeah.
that. Is character study, like, is that something you all cover in the course as well?
Yeah, in detail, absolutely. And one of the really nice aspects of the course, and this comes back to creating a course that's got solid basis in education. So people learn in different ways. So people learn by listening or by watching or by doing. So we've created the course so that whatever way you learn, you will be able to learn through this course. So we get you to do exercises at the end of each key module that helps you practice those skills. So with character, for example, we have character sheets, the kind of character sheets that we use ourselves to flesh out your character. And it's interesting when you start writing your character, like I do character sheets, because you never know when that tiny little thing that you wrote down at the beginning of the book that has been sitting in the back of your mind then comes into play in the book. So doing some of those things just makes a deeper character because you've done the work to start with. But again, not every author works that way. A lot of authors write the first 3 chapters to understand their character, and that's how they go about it as well, or a
Yeah.
combination of both.
And I think I'm more of a combination of both. So I vaguely fill out my character sheet. You certainly need to know your basic biographical information, but also what's their key wound. Certainly in the case of, I tend to write a lot of sort of very troubled heroes. What's happened to motivate that trouble, and it has to be authentic and credible. That sort of results in them having this quite damaged behavior in the book. But I also like to meet my characters as I go through. I find them really interesting to get to know. And the subconscious brain is amazing how it will feather the details without you realizing it. And you're writing and then suddenly you'll put something in and you'll go, oh, of course that's how he broke his arm when he was 7.
Absolutely. And I remember, honestly, back when I first started, authors saying to me, you will be amazed that your characters will take over. They will write the book themselves because they become very real. And I just thought that was insane. And then I was writing along one day and, my heroine did something that it just came out of my fingers and I'm like, oh my God, she just did that all on her own. Where did that come from? They come to life truly. I can't even, even as I say it, I still think it sounds weird when I say that to people, but that's what happens.
Absolutely.
So Jennifer, you mentioned something, like you mentioned how you were talking with this publisher and you're like, well, you don't publish category romance and that's what I
Yeah.
write. So
Yeah.
like, say student Bree is in the course and student Bree is like, I want to write a true love or forever, wherever you are in the world and whatever it's called, a romance here in the States.
Yeah.
Should student Bree be like focusing on writing her book as a true love, or should she just be writing it as a romance? And then that's when the editing part comes in. If she knows, okay, it needs to be like 50, 60,000 words, then that's where the editing comes in and she needs to start chopping it off. Like, what would you all tell student Bree? Because I feel like if you get so focused on category, but if you're new to writing romance in general, I can see it being so difficult. That's where I am.
So what I would say is get in there and write the story that's in your heart. Just go in there and see what happens. But and I'll get Claire to talk to this because she is the most disciplined author I have ever met in my life. But I think the way you get a book out, and you've got to write your first book. You've got to sit down, you've got to write it, and you have to finish it, because that is how you learn about your story, about your characters, and what kind of writer you are. So when I'm writing a book, I'm very disciplined. I get up early, and 5 minutes after I get up, I'm in my jammies in front of my computer with a cup of tea, and I am writing. And I write solidly for an hour, hour and a half. And you'd be amazed how many words you can get out. I mean, I get out a certain amount, but Clare Connelly gets out 4 times as many. And then you do that the next day and the next day until you get to around your 50, 55,000 words, and you see what you have. And I think what this course also, I wish I'd had this course, because I, in the beginning, would write, I'd cut 20,000 words out of the book because I'd ramble off and, fall down rabbit holes and, really didn't do enough upfront work on character and plot. But I learned how to do that by actually writing books. And this course will get you to write that first book.
So when you all got together, that first meeting of like, let's do this, how, or,
Yeah.
I'm assuming this was over a couple of meetings, but how did you all decide? Because the course there's 10 modules. Is the course 10 weeks or no?
Yeah, so there's 10 weeks of teaching, and
Okay.
then we give you 4 weeks. It's sort of reflection time, but during that whole time, we've got an interactive Facebook group. So each week, we're in there. People ask questions. People post up little sections. So it's really lovely, and people start really supporting each other. With the first course we ran, that group has gone off, as we understand it, and now have their own writers group together.
Oh,
So
wow.
the other thing you do is you meet writers on your level, and then it's really important to get that support, I think, when you're writing. And then you've got a buddy that you can share your work with, that you can go on the journey with. So we had that was a really lovely part of the course. So it's really well supported as you go through.
And
And
we also do, I'll just
yeah,
add, we also do this really fun thing where we do 4 sort of live chats with each other, or a couple of us will have a chat, and that's further breaking down what we've done in the modules. Or we'll watch a movie, so we'll have a recommended movie for that week, and then we'll chat about it from the perspective of what we've learnt so far. So it might be that we cover off dialogue and tension, and so there's always that support and sort of adding to what the principles that you're learning in the course.
So how did you all come up with like, okay, the 10 modules, the 10 points that you all hit on, like, how did you all come up with that?
well, basically what we did is, what are the essential things that a new writer or an aspiring writer needs to know to write the first book? And
Mhm.
that is how we came up with it. We cover everything that you need to be able to get in there and write that first book or your second book. And we support it too with this incredible workbook. So even at the end of the course, you have a workbook full of exercises and materials and information that you have forever, that you can refer back to when you're getting lost, as we all do from time to time.
Part of it is like writing romance that sells, right? And so
Hmm.
like we hear a lot of like, don't write to market, don't write to market. And I do think some of the best advice is like, write the book of your heart, write the book that you want to read. But I mean, it also is a business, right? So can you kind of talk us through the idea of like writing something that is going to sell? Because I think for a lot of aspiring writers, part of the intimidation is like seeing everything that's coming out and that feeling of like, my story may not be cozy witch vibes, or I may not be writing a rom-com. So can you talk to that?
The thing about romance is it's such a broad church, right? So there are literally readers of everything. So if you write the book that you love, chances are there are going to be readers that love it too. Now, it may not be that it's particularly on brand with publishers at the time that you've written it, in which case they're self-publishing, which is amazing because you can get your book out there and your readers can find it, as long as you package it in the right way, which we cover off in our self-publishing module. Um, the thing about romance too is there's shorthand for how to catch your readers. So romance readers know their tropes. They know that they love Marriage and Convenience, or they love Secret Baby, or they love uh, enemies to lovers, or Snowed In, or whatever. You know what your jam is as a romance reader. And so as long as you get that all over your blurb, if it's self-published, or you get that all over your synopsis if you're submitting to editors, because they know what they're looking for, I think that there are ways to give your book, if it's well written, the best chance of getting into the reader's hands.
Can you share some of like, a couple of things you would share in the self pub module?
Yeah, so it's quite big, and it's actually where we're recording a deep dive self-publishing module because there's so much that we want to cover off. I mean, it's really, there's a lot to learn, but we talk about taking, what you have to do when you self-publish is taking your precious baby book manuscript, which is the love of your heart, and turning it into a product, which you have to be a little less passionate about. So you have to be able to zoom out and look at how am I going to brand this to get it into readers' hands? And that can be hard because when you really love the book that you've written, you want to include all the details because it's all super important. Whereas you need to do that really high level marketing sort of thinking in order to self-publish. So we go through that. We go through a lot of the considerations like whether or not you're going to just put your book exclusively on Amazon, which means that you're in their Kindle Unlimited library, or whether or not you're going to go into the wide market. How do you do the actual publishing of getting a cover, getting it edited, what's involved in all of those stages. So it's a really, because it's a module in a broader course that's about writing, this is quite a high level overview of self-publishing, hence we're doing the deep dive as a separate course because there's just so much to go through.
I thought that I've been on the website a couple of times, and I'm always just, I'm a blog nerd, so I'm constantly checking to see, is there a new blog post? So what you both have actually, all of y'all have actually written blog posts. So Jennifer, you did one on setting, which I thought was fantastic, and Claire, you've done one on writing series. I'm just trying to like give examples because I want people to know about this course. So Jennifer, can you just share us a couple of tidbits on like capturing settings? To me, I love setting. It's probably one of my favorite things in a romance. Sometimes it's big, sometimes it's small. And of course, I love a good series. So, can both of you talk about those portions of the course?
Sure. I'm with you. I love an authentic setting. And I always find when I come up with a story, generally the first scene that comes to mind is my black moment. And so often in that black moment, the scene is there. And I have it wherever I've pitched it, but it's often as a result of traveling. So, for example, The Convenient Bride, that the whole inspiration for that book came as a result of being in Venice. And I was watching, you go down the Grand Canal and there are these gorgeous old buildings that are crumbling into the Grand Canal. And you just think, how can this be happening in this day and age? And it was that moment that not the whole story, but the inspiration for the story was just there. So I knew that part of the setting was going to be in Venice and that my heroine was going to be an architect who in the end gets to restore one of these incredible buildings on the Grand Canal that's falling in. So then I just had to find a billionaire hero and off we went from there. So setting often helps me craft the story because it just gives, all the sights, all the sounds, all the smells, all the feeling of how that book is going to be. So that's how, and that happens to me a lot. The setting is quite important.
It's part of being whisked away, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm the same. I love setting. And when I started out really seriously writing, when my kids were little and they would nap, I would always have photos above my desk and they would include my hero and heroine, but there would be more of the setting. And I would write a few keywords. So if it was in the Greek islands, it would be ocean, geraniums, terracotta walls, paved winding paths, all those things that are just instantly evocative of the setting so that you have that as a touchstone that you can make sure you're really infusing each scene with those subtle details to make it come alive for the reader. And in series too, the setting is so fun because often it can be that one central location that might feature in all of the books, say the family home. So in my Montebello series, which I self-published, there's the grandmother's house that they all go to. And so there's the same details are sort of shared through each of their books, even though they all live in different countries and have very different lives. So it's really fun to play with setting and make that feel like a really real sanctuary for your reader.
And your post was about writing series. So can you talk a little bit of just a couple of pieces of advice that you like to share about writing series?
I love a series. I actually find it really hard to not write a series. I find myself whenever I write now like a category, I kind of catch these little characters and go, oh my gosh, I wonder what will happen in their life after they leave. I could have like an 87 book series if I'm not careful. Because what I want as a reader and also as a writer is to have my readers fully invest in everything that happens in my book. So if I'm writing a book about a family, I want my readers to care about more than just the principal character. And again, in category romance, and we do cover this in the course, you have to be careful not to let the other characters overshadow the primary romance. So they still need to be used as sort of support structure to the developing romance between your main characters. But there's enough of them in there that your reader invests in them. And then there's usually, I will include in the epilogue a foreshadowing of what the next character's book is going to be about. And I think for me as a reader, I love going back to those same families, or whether they're connected through workplace or their old school friends. There is just something so nice about a series. It's just a great way. Also, if I take off my writing hat and put on my marketing hat, they are easy to sell, because once readers are invested in your characters, they are more likely going to want to buy the next book to see what happens. So it's sort of a no-brainer from that sense. If you're going to write another book and it's connected, it does make it easier to pitch it to your readers, because you've got an established reader for that book.
Y'all mentioned dialogue. Can we talk dialogue? Is that something that you find students are a little nervous about, or are we doing it wrong? Like, what are your thoughts on writing dialogue?
Oh my God, I was terrible at dialogue when I started. I was writing, it was so dramatic, and, oh my God, it was hilarious. I went back and read one of my first manuscripts, and it's just like, oh my God. So it is a skill to learn how to write natural dialogue, and it does take a bit of practice. And again, it's that writing the book and then reviewing that book that you will learn over time how to do it. But dialogue is really important, and we give lots of tips and tricks on how to make it sound authentic, how to learn to listen to your own voice, how to do characterization through good dialogue. We talk about how you do first person, second person, first person, third person, what feels natural for you. Because I've written in third person for so long, I would probably find it really hard now to write a book in first person.
Whereas I love jumping between. I find that like a little palate cleanser to do a first person book. But yeah, dialogue it's tricky. And I'm with Jen. My first books, they were so, some of the dialogue, as in first manuscripts, not published, thank goodness. Some of the dialogue was so bad. And you pick up some of your own pitfalls when you really start looking at dialogue. Like, I put in my characters' names all the time. So they'll be having a conversation and it will be like, Antonio, why are you late? Oh, Bernadette, the traffic was awful. Antonio, I told you not to take that interstate, And so they have these. And once I've picked that up, I now go through and I delete almost every time where they've used each other's names in dialogue, because we just don't talk like that. We don't use each other's names. So it's about reading your dialogue and seeing, is this realistic? We say in the course, read it aloud. Just read your dialogue out loud to yourself. But the flip side of that, because dialogue is so important, is when you get stuck. So student Bree, you're trying to write a scene and you're not feeling like it's working, just writing the dialogue is a really great way to sort of unclog yourself, because it frees you up from all of the having to worry about, their positioning and the setting. All of those things you can flesh out later. But the dialogue gets to the heart of how they're interacting with each other and their chemistry. And you can also really slip yourself into the story and hopefully get carried away by it and excited by it again if you just put them in a conversation together or a fight.
One thing that I've chatted with friends about, and I don't know if it's just like the current world that we're living in or what, but like a lot of readers aren't necessarily missing having a dark moment all the time. Like, obviously it depends on the book. Like, it makes total sense in some books, but then in some you finish it and you're like, it wasn't that dark of a dark moment and I'm okay. What would you tell student Bree about writing the dark moment? Because I think that's another thing that student Bree gets a little intimidated by.
I think every story is different. Like, I've got some dark moments that are truly gut wrenching, and I just, and they make my tummy churn, but in that way where you're going to get an amazing payoff.
Mhm.
But I have also written somewhere, as you say, there's just less angst overall, and perhaps that is reflective of the world being quite angsty at the moment, and us wanting our romance novels to be a bit of a reprieve from that. So my feeling is, that in terms of the dark moment, yes, you need to have this sort of moment where something causes your characters to realize that actually they want to make this work, they want to fight for their relationship. But yeah, it absolutely doesn't have to be this awful breaking them down to nothing moment. It does really depend on the tone of your overall story, and what the readers that you're pitching to are going to expect as well.
Should student Bree be aware of her writer voice before coming to the course? Or is that something the course will help her figure out and become comfortable with? Because student Bree is very not comfortable with her voice. And I know voice is very important.
This is a really interesting one about voice and how do you develop your voice. Personally, I think you develop your voice in it by writing. So you will find when you first start out, you might find it's stilted or you're a bit nervous or you're a bit this, but as you go on and write, your voice will emerge. And one of the little exercises I used to do with my students is, write to pick a moment of your childhood and write how you felt in that moment, or go and look at letters that or emails that I'm old enough that we used to write letters, emails, and in your emails to your friends you will see your own voice in there because you're being yourself. So do little tricks like that to see what you write, how you're like, and write when you first write that first book. Write it as if nobody's going to read it and take
Mm.
the editor off and just, imagine that you're the only person in the world who's ever going to read this book. So really, it doesn't matter. And I think that really helps you write in your own voice. Claire, what do you reckon?
I 100% agree. So when I am writing a book, I don't ever think about a reader. That is what happens as soon as I write the end. I then have to go back and read it as my editor would. But and then to put on my marketing hat, but I write it. You can get in your own head and be your own worst enemy, because we're so critical of ourselves, and it's so easy to become self-conscious as a writer. And I totally get it, especially when you're starting out. You feel like it's never going to happen, and it's a bit of a pipe dream, and you say all those things to yourself, which makes you doubt what you're putting down, and am I writing this the right way? And just letting yourself write the story, your voice will come through. And it might be that it takes you a book or two to get your voice, to find your voice, and to lose that sort of self-consciousness in writing. But you've just got to push through. Trust that you will write the story that you're meant to write, and your voice will be there because it's you.
Yeah, honestly, Brie, I think, I honestly, I've taught writing for a long time now, and I think you can learn how to write a great book. I think what happens is people don't start because they're scared. People
Mm.
don't start because they don't think they can do it. And also, people give up too soon. You
Yeah.
will get rejection in this business, and you just have to work through it. You've got to really want it, and then you will get there.
I was so close to giving up, like I can't even tell you. And it was really that Hail Mary after 2 glasses of wine when I self-published that book. And I can't believe it. Like it's my full-time job. And there is honestly nothing else I'm really fit for, to be honest. And I can't, but I really came so close to giving up, because writers are quite sensitive people on the whole, I think. And so getting rejections is really difficult. But as Jen says, you just have to keep going.
And now Claire Connelly has sold millions and millions of books, not only through her self-publishing career, but through Harlequin. And imagine if she'd given up, we would
Mm.
lose. Yeah, you can't give up. If you want this life badly, you will get there, but you have to work hard for it.
Yeah.
Mm.
I think it was like the first time we had Presents Modern author Maisie Yates on the podcast, and she's
Mm-hmm.
like, I still get rejected. And I'm like, no, you know, it never really stops, you know, but we wouldn't have Maisie Yates if she gave up in the
No.
beginning. So,
And
yeah.
Maisie's amazing. I was actually going to use her as an example because I know that with, I don't think it's all of her books, but I know with some of them she actually dictates. And that's something that I struggle with personally. My brain doesn't work that way, but it may be something that you want to try is dictating some of your story and see if that's a medium that helps you kind of get past that self-consciousness of writing just to get the story out initially.
And I know authors who still write longhand. Their first drafts are longhand because they can't, the typing ruins it for them. So you've just got to try different ways, and you will discover this as you write what works for you. But you have to you have to write that first book to learn a lot about your writing style.
And this is Student Brie is just perfect because this is why we did the course. Like we are all so passionate about this because it's so many people are writing and giving up, or they're writing and they've got all the ingredients, but they're just putting them together wrong or not baking it long enough. And we all individually have had so many people come up and ask for advice, and it is seriously so heart lifting to have this course and be getting the feedback that we're getting, and just to see those practical differences in people's writing and the confidence that they're coming out of the course with. It has just been wonderful. I'm so glad that we did it.
We had one of our students the other day telling us she was bawling her eyes out because what she'd written was so good.
Well, that's going to be one of the best compliments ever.
Yeah, it was great.
It helps make people cry. It's great.
How does the course, I mean, okay, one thing me and the aspiring writer friends I have, we talk a lot about is, are you a plotter or a pantser, or are you a mixture of both? If you come to the course and you're like, I think I'm a pantser, and I'm, how does the course, should that even matter as the aspiring writer, the student coming to the course, or is it not a factor at all?
I think one of the lovely things about this is that all four of us approach writing a book in a different way. So and Ali Blake is brilliant for this because she is a pantser puzzler, right? And I had no idea that someone could put a book together the way Ali Blake puts together a book. And she talks about that process. And I started out as a pantser, and I was a dreadful pantser. I
feel like I'm a dreadful pantser.
I was dreadful. And, I'd write books, I'd throw out words. Oh, it was awful. So then I taught, because I was an ex-management consultant as well, I thought this is really inefficient. You need to learn how to do this better. So I taught myself how to be a plotter. And that changed, absolutely changed how I wrote and how efficient I could be and how well I could write. And we take you through that in the course.
Yeah, we literally have a plotter or pantser section in the course because we're all different. So I'm 100% a pantser. So I basically know my couple's conflict, and I usually have an idea of their dark moment, and I have what I like to call a Hollywood moment. So there's that really iconic scene like kissing in the rain or whatever. But other than that, I really like to read the book as I write it. So I love the surprise that comes with writing the book and my characters taking over. So there's a few different perspectives on that because there's no right or wrong way. So it's just, and some books you will need to plot a little bit more. And there's this quote that I always bungle, and I should know it because I say it or attempt to say it so many times, but it's about, you can drive, I don't even know who says it, I'm the worst, but you can drive across, an entire country at night and you can just see as far as your headlights or something. So you can literally write the whole book as long as you know what's happening in the next little bit. You can write a whole book that way. So that's kind of how I work.
So the next How to Write Love course is in September.
That's right. We're kicking off on the 4th of September. So we have registrations open so people can jump onto the course now and get a spot. We keep the numbers fairly, not, we like to keep the numbers to a certain amount so that we get a lot of interactivity, but equally you get attention on the Facebook page from us. So I would jump on early because last time we sold out in 4 days.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And we're super excited. We're trialing this year. So this will be our first time that we do it, obviously, but we have got a Facebook group set up for a nano boot camp that we're going to be running in November for the National Novel Writing Month, which is
Oh my gosh.
theoretically, I think you're meant to aim for 50,000 words in the month. But honestly, we're going to say set your own goal. It might be that you want to write 5,000 words in November, but we're going to be in there giving weekly support, motivation, check-ins. The group is not live yet, but if you sign up to our newsletter, we'll be putting links to that. And I think it's going to build to be a really great annual resource. I'm super excited because I'm very passionate about productivity. So I can't wait for that one. Got my list ready.
And just wait. Anybody doing the course, you just see Claire's passion come through with productivity. I mean, she is the most productive person you've ever met in your life, and you can't help but be inspired. And with the nano course, it's open to everybody and it's free, so just jump on in, join us. It's just a way to really support writers to get the words on the page, because as Claire said, you can fix it later, but you cannot fix it if you haven't written it.
I am signed up for the newsletter, so I will be keeping my eye out for that. So like I will be returning to work for the first time since 2019 at the end of August, but I definitely want to participate in Nano. So I want to be part of this group. Claire,
Wonderful.
give me a productive tip because I will be teaching. So it'll be like 5 o'clock when I come home in the evening. How do I make time for writing at the end of the day?
So, oh gosh, I could just go on and on about this, but basically I think everyone's different. So I like to work in blocks of an hour. You may find that you can only work in 3 blocks of 15 minutes through the day for the moment. Maybe you have to find 15 minutes in a lunch break and 15 minutes after you've come home and you've sort of had a shower or made dinner or whatever it is you do. It's also, and in that time, put all of your devices in flight mode, set an actual timer on your phone so that you know you've got your full 15 minutes, and see how many words you do and watch yourself get more words down each time as the story absorbs you. Another thing I do that I think really supercharges my productivity is before I go to bed each night, I read back a bit of what I've written in the day. And I swear, with absolutely no scientific basis whatsoever, but just my reconology at play, that my brain overnight works on whatever I've been writing. Because when I wake up, like Jen, the first thing I do, I grab my laptop. I've usually got it stashed under the bed. I grab it out and I start writing. And again, even if it's only 15 minutes, for me, I tend to do an hour. But even if it's only 15 minutes, I find the morning brain is amazing. It's like you're still linked to the sleep magic or something, and your creativity is just there. So that's what works for me. But it's important to find what creates the optimal setting for you. It might be that having a playlist on your phone and you put your AirPods in to really sink yourself back into your story, no matter where you are, if that's in a busy cafe near your office or that could help you. It may be that if you take to dictation on your commute home, if you're driving, that you're able to dictate. Just watch that you don't run off the road because you get so caught up in your story. So we go through so much of this in the course, and we also do a productivity Facebook Live because, as you can tell, I get so excited about it because I think everybody is different, but we can all supercharge our writing just by paying attention to what works for us and what our optimal productivity is. And seriously, the flight mode tip is key. Kill all your devices, because it just getting that little text message, even if you ignore it, it pulls you out of your story. So it's just turning off all distractions, setting your intention with whoever you live with, or with a friend, or you text them and say, I'm going to write for an hour, I'm going to do 1,000 words, or whatever your goal is. So it's accountability. So many tips.
So one more like creative process question I have. So like you mentioned we've talked like playlist. I know a lot of people use Pinterest for the visual part of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is something simple that we should be doing that's going to help us? Should we make the board and just have the board up on the computer in front of us, or is that going to be distracting? Should we print the photos out? Like, what should we be doing for that visual?
Yeah, so I think, again, everyone's different. There's no right or wrong. I sit here talking to you. You would have this quite chaotic view of my wall in your minds because I've described everything I'm looking at. But I have about 30 photos printed of my hero and heroine. and the city that my next book is written in stuck on my glass French doors of my office, because I like to sit back in my chair and look at them, and it just keeps you in the story. But you should see, like, Amy Andrews, Ali Blake, their Pinterest boards are unbelievable. They work from Pinterest. And Jem, what about you? Do you use Pinterest or photos or neither? Both?
Yeah, I'm more like you. I have it up in front of me.
Yeah.
Pictures of exactly the scene and the characters, just so that you can, every now and again you just sit back and look at that, and it gives you, the senses, as we were talking about before, the sights, the sound, the smells. Those are the kind of the rich things that you can weave into your story.
And if you're writing a series, it definitely helps to have that Pinterest board for each character, or to have them printed out, but to keep them printed out, or to have them in a PDF or something that you can refer back to, because by the time you're on book 6 of the series, and you might have written other books in between, you don't always remember what color the hero's eyes were or what color the heroine's hair was. So you need to, it's really helpful just to have that quick visual. Otherwise you have to go back into that manuscript and do a document search for eyes or hair. And it also just keeps them really real and vivid in your mind as you progress through the series.
So say we have a listener that can't make the September course. Do you all know how often the course is going to run?
Yeah, so at the moment we're running it 3 times a year. So if you can't make September, don't worry. We'll be starting up again in 2024. And the other thing to look out for is that we've been brainstorming, as Claire mentioned. We've got a self-publishing course coming out, and we're looking at doing things on editing and going on to deep dives in certain areas, like how to write great sex scenes. So watch this space, because we've got lots of, this is our big foundation course, but we've got lots of other course ideas that we're going to be coming up with.
Yeah. I think that this course is so important and so needed. Like, I think, especially obviously with the pandemic, more and more people discovered their love of romance. And romance is one of those genres that, like, I never saw myself as a writer, but and I came to romance late. The more that I read romance, I was like, I want to do this. Like,
Brilliant.
I read a couple of Allie's Kiss novels a couple of months ago, and I was like, oh man, I wish Kiss was still a thing, because I want to write a Kiss. You can't help but you want to do it yourself, but just because you love to read it doesn't mean you can write it. So I just think it's so important. So how do you, for you all as writers that are teaching this course, has it taught you anything about yourself as a writer or yourself as a romance reader?
Well, as I said, I mean, I am a pantser, and I have learned so much from Ali's structure module. I mean, I have written, I've lost count, over 130 books, I think. And yet seeing how Ali approaches structure has been quite life-changing. She breaks it down in a way that I won't even attempt to summarize here, because I will not do it justice. But she just makes it so innate and accessible. So yeah, absolutely, there are things in there, and just it is I've learned a lot going through the course, and also seeing things broken down as we've done it. It just makes it so accessible. As Jen said, I'm so proud of this course. I really think it's a great resource.
And I'm so nervous about writing sex. So knowing that Amy Andrews
I was just going to say, well, that's why I was going to say, Amy Andrews is a master at writing sex. And I learned quite a bit from her module as well. So, it's amazing. You can write a lot of books, but we are all always learning and we're all always getting better. So for me, it was the writing great sex I learned a lot from, but also from Claire's productivity. I mean, I am a really productive person. I'm very efficient, all of those things. But I was looking at that going, oh my God, okay, Jen must try harder.
But it's not intimidating, right?
Not intimidating.
It's
amazing.
Not about writing 50,000 words a week. It's about you supercharging what's realistic for you and staying on track. So that's what it's just those little tips that mean you won't waste a 15-minute window when you could be writing.
And Claire's so inspiring. I mean, you spend 5 minutes with this woman and, you think you can rule the world.
Oh, yeah. Oh, bless you. What a nice way to start a Monday morning.
Well, can both of you share where our listeners can find you all online and then where we can find information for the course?
Yeah, so we've used a really fabulous US education platform called Teachable. So you will find us at Teachable How to Write Love is where the course, but we've also got our website. You can just go to howtowritelove.com. And if you want to find me, I'm at jenniferstgeorge.com.
Can I just say that when you go to the website, there's the woman, she's like holding a cup of coffee or tea, and then you just see like the laptop, and I'm like, I feel like that's me. Like I feel like they had someone take a photo of me.
Brilliant.
I love coffee. So. Claire, I'm sorry I cut you off. Can you please share where we can keep up with you?
Oh, not at all. ClareConnelly.com.
Well, I will have links to where we can keep up with you all, as well as where we can find the course. Listeners, the next course is in September. If you miss it, that is totally fine. Jennifer, can you remind us if we want to be part of the group for Nano, we can just sign up for the newsletter. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if you sign up for the newsletter, we'll be sending you a link out to our dedicated Facebook page, and we'll have more information coming out on that in the next few weeks.
All right. Thank you so much, you two, for sharing your time with me on Monday morning, your time, Sunday evening with mine. This has been such a blast. I've been looking forward to it so much. And thank you so much for the course. It's so selfless of you all, 4 fabulous writers sharing your time with us. It's fantastic. And I can't wait to be part of it because student Bree needs to write.
We would so love to have you. And this has just been such a joy. I've had so much fun. So thank you so much for having us.
It really has been lovely to chat. I love your podcast. So thanks very much for having us on.